All right, for a look at the latest in the markets, we have Lavan Gopaul, who is director at Merchant Africa. Thank you very much for staying on, Laval. I mean, like, oil has been going down ever since the lockdown, or rather the advent of COVID-19. But did it really have to go down this hard?
We've seen a number of factors affecting that oil price. And of course, before the problem that occurred yesterday, because of storage, remember what's happened yesterday is a number of oil contracts that started to expire. People that had bought these contracts had to take delivery, and there was no storage. This is because nobody is consuming oil, or of course, because of COVID-19, the demand for oil in production, in transport, is a lot lower. But the problem had started much before this. If you rewind to a few weeks ago, you saw the oil price fall quite sharply because of problems that had occurred with an OPEC agreement. Russia, being part of that agreement, had decided to remove themselves, to extricate themselves from the OPEC agreement. And as a result, you saw the Brent price drop quite sharply. That was the first hit for a number of oil producers globally. So whilst Brent had fallen, it took the West Texas intermediate price down. And yesterday, what had happened is it fell even further as a number of U.S. producers continued production amidst a low demand. Now, the unique problem in the U.S. is that it is production in a landlocked country, or production that doesn't touch sides with a port. It produces the oil and then sends the oil through to Oklahoma for storage, and then is distributed to the U.S. for consumption. This is different from Brent, which is produced in a number of destinations globally, and then placed on containers to be delivered at different ports. As a consequence of the problem that you had with a lack of storage, you saw the oil contracts fall into negative territory. Another way of putting it is there was a payment that you would get if you took the oil off the hands of the producers. It cost them that much to store that they were paying people to take it away.
So if I have to come in there, Lavan, if I have to come in there, I'm just running out of time. I just want to sum it up in terms of the context regarding investments in shares. When you look at the market, for example, Sasol, how does the COVID-19 era compare to the FMD era? Especially, you know, people who are saying that, well, I've got shares in Sasol, I've got Inzalo shares. How am I affected?
Okay, firstly, the Sasol and Zalo shares go back some time, and this was at a period when the Sasol share price was a lot higher. Since then, you've seen that the price had always been below the initial price of issue during Sasol and Zalo. As a consequence, you saw that the Zalo shares were delisted from the exchange in 2018. So unfortunately, that is one of those BE transactions that did not work out as well as it could have. And of course, Sasol has been going through a number of problems. It has been downgraded by rating agencies, and so now it'll cost Sasol a great deal to borrow money. They'll have to pay abnormally higher interest rates. So you've seen that problem with Sasol, as well as the commodity price falling sharply. Unfortunately, it isn't a rosy time for Sasol. As it opened today, you saw yesterday's close of about 56 rands. It fell to 42 rand odd during early trade and has bounced back since, but is still down amidst the JSE that had been down by between 3 and 2% through most of the trading day.
All right. So, Lavan, just very briefly, as we have been tracking the market concerning the price of gold as well as emerging market currencies, just very briefly.
Okay, let's consider what has happened in the commodity space because of the unusual occurrence with West Texas Intermediate oil falling to below zero. You've seen a race for cash on commodity exchanges. A number of contracts relating to gold, relating to palladium, a number of other commodities are being dumped simply because traders and players in the commodity space require cash urgently. So as a result, you've seen a massive dip in the platinum price, the gold price falling something like 2%. Also, a number of shifts within the currency market as a consequence of these commodity moves. The South African rand having pushed past 19 rand to a dollar level, and this may have a lot to do with the fact that much of our wealth and our fortunes are stashed in commodities, whilst a number of global players have seen share prices dip sharply. The JSE have seen a lot of pain on gold and platinum counters, whilst in London, you've seen a sharp dip in a number of resource and mining stocks as well.
Okay, Lavan, just very briefly, we have seen that other countries have partially opened their economies. And coming back to South Africa, we are expecting the president to address the nation tonight. And really, what should we expect, especially in his attempt to try and balance, envisaging to try and spur the economy back into traction, as well as, the interest of the lives of South Africans there? Then how does he juggle around?
It becomes a very difficult decision for the president to make, whilst you consider that opening up the economy would mean putting us all at risk with the virus being spread. And at the same time, the system in terms of the health sector is not able to cater for a large number of ill people. However, with our economy having been closed, it has created a deep economic impact. And for us to spring out of this will be very difficult. You'll find that a number of factories will start producing, but in smaller quantities, and will require less number of staff. So you're going to see, unfortunately, even more job losses after we come out of the lockdown. Some of the other important takeaways is the fact that our trading with other nations, that is goods that we export, whether it's fresh produce or manufactured goods, is not going to be in high demand. And you're also going to see a massive hit by the insurance sector globally, with so many people passing away because of COVID-19. You're likely to have massive insurance claims. All of these factors speak to a shrinking economy. So unfortunately, even when we do lift the lockdown, and it's presumed that the president will talk about the conditions of lifting the lockdown later today, you're still going to see an economy that will be dragging along at a very slow pace. It may take some time for us to normalize, and this is something, unfortunately, South Africa is with the rest of the world in this depressed period. So it's not as though we can ask for a helping hand from some of our neighboring countries. One of the other interesting aspects about the COVID-19 and the economy is some of the developing countries are now putting question marks on international aid and investment. And they're afraid that some countries that have large amounts of wealth may look to prize out and buy cheap assets. So some of the Asian countries have been putting out recommendations that they are afraid that China may decide to buy up cheap assets in their country. So there are a number of very difficult decisions to make. One of those is, of course, lifting the lockdown, and the way that we do it, and the speed that how we return this economy back to normal.
All right, Lavan, quite insightful market commentary there. And of course, let's allow the president to make the announcement, and then we can look at the options available. But for now, it's always a pleasure doing market analysis with you. Thank you so much. Lavan Gopaul is director at Merchant Africa, talking to us there via Skype. And Of course, you're still watching SA Today, looking at market sense. Eskom says low revenue amidst the national lockdown means it cannot accept or buy coal from Exxaro until at least a month after the lockdown is over. The power utility declaring a force majeure on 2 of its contracts with the coal mining company, but Exxaro is intending to fight the call, saying the situation does not constitute a force majeure as stipulated in the coal supply agreement. This is because Eskom's power stations are still capable of supplying power. So Exxaro supplies coal to the Medupi and Matimba power stations from its mine in Limpopo. Eskom expects to lose 5 billion rand in revenue per month of the lockdown due to lower demand. All right, that's our business news. Of course, it's always a pleasure being with you. We're going to take a break, and when we return, Peter continues with the program. Please leave that remote control alone, because we'll be right back.